Welcome to the Strategy Rewind Podcast. I am your host, Miguel Lebron. Here at the Strategy Rewind Podcast, we look at the relationship between goals, strategies, belief, and objective breakthrough. I'm so excited for today's episode. Hey, if we haven't met before, thank you for being connected here today. I am a father, a leader, an author, a strategy coach, and mentor, and I partner with individuals who have a goal but need a strategy. And in this podcast, we focus on the strategy to help you have a breakthrough moment. I heard an awesome quote which says there are two powerful days in your life. The first day is when you are born, and the second day is when you figure out why you're born. And this is an awesome quote, right? Because we're all created and born with a purpose. We all arrive to this world with a purpose. And when we can align our passion and our purpose, we can do some extraordinary things. Now, we oftentimes don't like to talk about what happens at the end. And the truth is that at the end, we will all, at one point or another, depart from this world. And I know that that's not like a happy topic for everyone to speak about. We've all lost ones. I've lost loved ones. And exactly that's why I'm doing this podcast episode today, because oftentimes we don't talk about this. I know as a Latino in the Latin community, sometimes it's a conversation we kind of avoid. But the truth is that we need to have this type of conversation. The conversation of how do I deal with the passing of a loved one? How do I deal with grief? Unfortunately, there are individuals that I know, and I'm sure maybe you can relate to this, individuals that have tried to find their joy or peace at the end of a bottle or at the end of a needle or etc. Unfortunately, that isn't the case. You're not going to find your peace there, and you're not going to find solace there. The truth of the matter is that we have to confront these emotions, the situation that someone has passed. The individual that really marked my life that passed was my mother. When my mother told us that she had cancer, it was around the holiday season, and she tried to hide it as long as she could, but unfortunately, she couldn't any longer. Her doctor told her it was time for her to speak to her family, and she did. And when she spoke to us, I remember that my siblings and I, we were in the kitchen, and we were standing there, and it was a moment of silence, and she said, I have something to tell you all. We knew it was heavy because she had tears already in her eyes, and she hadn't even told us what it was. And she said to us that she had cancer and that the doctors did not assure her anything. And so she started treatment and started kind of working towards it. But unfortunately, the cancer had spread too much where they really couldn't start anything such as chemotherapy. It was simply something, a waiting game. And that's exactly what it felt like. It was a waiting game. I put my life on pause. And when I say that, I don't mean metaphorically. I mean literally put my life on pause. I told my job I'd be back when I can come back. and I left my wife and daughter and children. I said, hey, listen, I love you all. And you're very important to me. And this journey that we're all going through is very important. But I need to be by my mother's side. And I want to just say thank you to my wife because she was understanding, she was loving, she was compassionate, she was empathetic, and she was there. It wasn't something that I had to go through by my own. Not only was she there, but I also had friends and family and the people of my faith community that were there. I mean, I am just so grateful when I look back at that moment. But it didn't change the fact that she was slowly before our eyes, she was dying. And the truth is that when she passed away, it was interesting because it was abrupt. I was with her in the hospital that day, and she woke up. I woke up. When I woke up, I saw her. She was laying in her bed, and her eyes were open, and she was looking around, but she wasn't saying a word. And I would try to engage in conversation and at least say, hey, nod if you're okay, or nod if you need anything, or, wiggle a toe, anything like this. But she just wasn't engaging in that way. And I walked out of the room to go to work because at this point I had exhausted all of my vacation time and sick time. And I even had coworkers who really really showed empathy for me, and they even lent me at the place where I worked at that particular time. You could give your PTO to someone else, and they did that. They took their PTO and gave it to me. Amazing people, amazing. Nevertheless, it was time for me to go back to work, so I had to go to work. And by the time I got from the hospital to my job, which was maybe about 15, 20 minutes at most, by the time I got in the door and I was getting ready to clock in, I got the news, your mom passed away. And so it was tough. It was tough. And it was something that I had to deal with. There was no running away from this. But how do we deal with this? Right now that this is happening, it's real. How do we deal with it? We knew it was coming, but how do we deal with it? And I'll tell you the number one thing that kept me was my faith. And I don't mean to be cliche, but it was literally my faith that kept me. And on top of that, layered with that, was my wife and my family, my support system. And oftentimes in situations like this, when dealing with grief, we almost want to isolate ourselves as if we can hide from the situation. We're not going to be able to hide from the situation. We're also not going to be able to bring the person back. And we also cannot ignore for long that they're gone. And I tell you, one of the most difficult parts for me in dealing with this was realizing that she's gone. It wasn't that she had passed. Like, I understood, okay, I saw her pass. I saw that moment, in the cemetery. I understand all of that. It was just gone. And how do you keep the memory alive was the challenge that I had. And I had to find a new way to honor her, a new way. I've actually written a blog about this, and I want to encourage you to head over to my website, miguellebron.com, because I had a moment to meditate on this where I wrote about that, the saying, she's gone, and the dealing with the fact that she's gone. But today we're talking about grief and how can we overcome it. And the fact is that it's hard. It's a challenge. And so number one, I found solace in faith. And I would say, man, faith kept me. It's the number two, my family kept me. I did not isolate myself. In fact, there was one day where my wife called my brother and said, listen, I need you to take Miguel out. I need you to, go watch a movie, go to a game, go shopping, go do something. She was like, I'll even give you money, but you need to go because he needs, he needs to get away for a moment. And I just can't thank my wife enough on the support that she was. And the truth is that this is what is required: a support system that is genuine, a support system that understands you and that honors you and covers you in that moment. So not only was my faith carrying me in this situation, and not only was the individuals who are part of the faith community that I'm part of helping me and carrying me in their prayers, in their thoughts, with their words, but also with their deeds. And they were just always like, hey, Miguel, we got you. We got you. And they made themselves available. I tried deeply not to burden anyone, but they made themselves available to me. And that meant the world, because I wasn't going through this by myself. And if you've lost a loved one in this regard, with regards to a parent, oftentimes parents are the bridge that connects everyone. At least in my household, that's how it was. My mom was the bridge that connected everybody. And so even though my brother, my older brother, my younger brother, my sisters, like even though all my siblings, they all have different lifestyles. We all have different lifestyles, thoughts, and ideas as in your home. Oftentimes, it is that parent that kind of bridge everyone together and connects everyone and forces everyone to come to the table. And that's the role my mother had. Like, my mom would just bring everybody to the table. That's just what she did. And so the moment that she passed, now it was like everybody was dispersed. And so it was tough because everyone was going through their own grieving process. And so finding a way to converse with other individuals such as my brothers and sisters, wasn't the easiest. And so having the space where at the very least I knew that if I needed to talk to somebody, I knew that I had people in my corner was amazing. Was amazing. And what I would just encourage you that right now are going through grief is don't lose your faith. And I would encourage you to surround yourself with people that would nourish you at this time. I've often said surround yourself with people that would nourish your vision. This is a moment where you need nourishment, you need help, you need support. And trying to go through it by yourself is not going to be easy. And for those who want to make themselves available to someone who's going through this process, listen. Let me just say, we love you. We love you. But the truth is, oftentimes people will say things like, hey, don't cry. No, cry. Bring those emotions out to the surface, because if you don't bring it out to the surface, you can't deal with it. And if you can't deal with it, eventually when you least expect it, you'll be standing somewhere and be like, oh my goodness, this was the cake she always loved, and start breaking out crying. And she's like, why are you crying over cake? And it's like, no, there's just emotions that haven't been addressed. And so to those who are making themselves available to someone, a friend, a relative who is going through this process, listen, let them cry. Be willing to cry with them. Be vulnerable. Vulnerability is not a weakness. I say this to my guys, family, vulnerability is not a weakness. Be willing to cry. I know it's hard. It's tough sometimes because especially as a male, and as a male Latino, we kind of have to be tough and hard and etc. But the fact of the matter is that in that moment, emotions are emotions. And I would just encourage you, number one, a strategy that you can implement to get through this moment, to meet to the other side, to survive this situation. Number one, keep your faith. Keep your faith. Don't lose faith. It's imperative. It's necessary to know that the sun will come out tomorrow. Surround yourself with people that will nourish you, that want to cry with you, that want to, pray with you, speak with you. And at the same time, understand that you moving on with your life is not leaving them behind. You moving on with your life, you continuing to be a mother or a father, you continuing to be, the professional you are, continuing to do the things you do, that's not leaving them behind. You're bringing them along as well through the journey, through the stories, through the lessons, through the memory. You're bringing them. And now, again, these are just the strategies that helped me. I want to bring on to this conversation Jesse Cruz. He is a life coach. He's a speaker. He's a grief coach. And man, he's host some amazing masterminds. But I want to bring him on to this conversation because I believe there's some insight here. Jesse as well has gone through some challenges with regards to overcoming grief. And I believe this is going to be so insightful. Jesse, thank you for being on here today. For those who aren't familiar with your work and with what you're doing, let them know about you.
Thank you so much, Miguel, for having me on the show. So I'm a professional speaker, storytelling coach, best-selling author, and mastermind dinner event planner. My latest book, Losing Faith, Finding Hope, is about our daughter who was born premature. And, we didn't know what to expect with her, as she was born 4 months premature. And I explained the story of our experience with her in the hospital, the ups and downs, the roller coaster ride, the good and the bad. And after 42 days of her fighting for her life, she passed away in our arms. And we left that hospital completely broken and empty-handed and feeling so lonely and isolated in that grief. I didn't know what to do. So from that time forward, through my healing journey, I began writing. And writing was the way that helped me cope with my loss.
It's definitely a powerful story you should all check out. Losing Faith, Finding Hope. Of course, it's available on Amazon, and you can use the show links as well. But Jesse, what tactics could we give to those listeners that are still going through the grieving process, which we know it's a challenging one? What tactics, what strategy could we give them so that they could begin to move forward in their life?
I think one of the key things is to seek professional help. So my wife and I, we went to therapy together. And then me and my wife and my kids went to like a family support group. So having support groups, therapy, counseling, getting connected with a faith-based community to support you are going to be huge stepping stones to your recovery.
Jesse, for those that are listening and want to connect with you, they want to continue forward, let them know how they can get in contact with you and continue on in that journey.
One of the best ways to connect with me is by email. My email is authorjessecruz@gmail.com. I connect with people there constantly. Or if you're on Facebook, Jesse Cruz. On Instagram, Jesse Cruz Speaks. TikTok, Jesse Cruz Speaks 42. And I'm also on LinkedIn. So social media is a big way that I'm connecting with other people.
I want to take this moment to thank everyone who has been connected here today. Thank you. If you found value and insight with the strategies discussed today, check out the show notes for further highlights and helpful links, and consider subscribing to be notified when a new weekly episode is available. Also, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, as that helps us know that you like this podcast and want more of it. A special thanks to today's guest, and please be sure to follow them for more helpful information. Well, I'll connect with you on the next episode of Strategy Rewind, but in between time and in the meantime, check out MiguelLebron.com, where you'll find free resources. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you shortly.